My parents slapped me at my own graduation, right there on the pristine university lawn, surrounded by cheering families and caps flying high. They didn't just slap me, they screamed, "You don't deserve that degree. You're a disgrace." The words echoed through the stunned silence that followed, sharper and more painful than any physical blow. I stood there, cap askew, my brand-new diploma clutched in a trembling hand, tears blurring the faces of my bewildered classmates. Was I wrong for cutting them out of my life completely after that? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same thing? Let me take you back to where it all began, to a childhood that felt less like growing up and more like an endless audition for a role I could never quite master. My name is Alex, and from the moment I can remember, my life has been dictated by the relentless pursuit of perfection, not for myself, but for my parents. They were immigrants, proud of their heritage, but absolutely obsessed with the idea of achieving the American dream through their children. And I, being the eldest, bore the brunt of those expectations. My younger sister, Sarah, always seemed to escape their laser focus, perhaps because she was naturally more outgoing and less prone to questioning, or perhaps because I unknowingly became the shield that absorbed all their pressures. From kindergarten, my grades were paramount. Anything less than A was met with icy silence, disapproving stares, and long, agonizing lectures about wasted potential and the sacrifices they had made. There were no good jobs, in their eyes, only a handful of prestigious professions: doctor, lawyer, engineer. I was pushed towards medicine from a young age, despite my burgeoning love for literature and creative writing. My afternoons were a blur of advanced tutoring sessions, extracurriculars designed to bolster a medical school application, and endless hours spent hunched over textbooks, while my friends were out playing or, just being kids. My parents ran a small dry cleaning business, working tirelessly, often 7 days a week. I saw their struggle, I truly did, and a part of me desperately wanted to make them proud, to validate their sacrifices. But their love felt conditional, tied directly to my achievements. A perfect report card earned a fleeting smile. A scholarship offer brought a moment of genuine warmth. But these moments were rare, quickly overshadowed by the next hurdle, the next expectation. They saw me not as a person with my own dreams and aspirations, but as an investment, a project whose successful outcome would define their own worth. High school was a pressure cooker. I was student body president, captain of the debate team, and valedictorian. I got into every Ivy League school I applied to, and my parents were ecstatic. This, they believed, was the beginning of their payoff. They bragged about me constantly to their friends and relatives, showcasing my achievements like trophies. But beneath the surface, I was crumbling. I chose a prestigious university, not because it was my first choice, but because it was theirs. And I declared a pre-med major, even though my heart yearned for the English department. The moment I stepped onto that university campus, a tiny, rebellious spark ignited within me. Away from their constant surveillance, I started to breathe. I excelled in my pre-med courses, maintaining good grades, but I also secretly enrolled in creative writing workshops. Those classes were my sanctuary, a place where I felt genuinely seen and heard, where my ideas were celebrated, not critiqued through the lens of future income potential. I started writing short stories, poems, and even essays that explored my own identity, separate from my parents' narrative. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly mine. During my sophomore year, I made a decision that would ultimately shatter our already fragile relationship. I changed my major. I switched from pre-med to English literature, with a minor in creative writing. I knew this would be catastrophic, so I kept it a secret. I meticulously crafted my course schedule to still include enough science classes to maintain the illusion, at least for a while. I planned to tell them after I had a solid foundation in my new major, when I could show them my passion, my talent, and perhaps, just perhaps, convince them that this was a viable path. I started working part-time jobs tutoring, working in the campus library to pay for my creative writing conference fees, and to slowly save up for my own living expenses, just in case. I felt a sense of liberation mixed with a constant, gnawing anxiety. The secret was a heavy burden, weighing on me every single day. Every phone call, every visit home felt like a performance. I'd carefully filter my conversations, avoiding any mention of my new classes, deflecting questions about specific professors. It was exhausting. I lived in a constant state of vigilance, terrified of slipping up. My grades in English soared. I was published in the university's literary magazine, and even won a prestigious award for a short story. These achievements, which filled me with a profound sense of accomplishment, were also a source of immense guilt because I couldn't share them with the people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters. The discovery, as most secrets do, came out in the most mundane yet devastating way. It was the spring of my senior year, just a few months before graduation. My university had sent out an official letter detailing my degree, major, and graduation ceremony information. It was addressed to my parents' home, as that was my official mailing address on file. I had completely forgotten about it, engrossed in finishing my thesis and preparing for the job market, which, to their horror, was not in medicine. The phone call was terrifying. My mother's voice, usually a stern monotone, was shrill, laced with betrayal. "English literature? What is this, Alex? What have you done?" My father took the phone, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He accused me of being a liar, a manipulator, of throwing away all their sacrifices, all their hopes and dreams. He called me ungrateful, selfish, and a failure. He demanded I change my major back, even though it was far too late. He threatened to cut me off, to disown me. I tried to explain, to articulate my passion, my talent, the awards I had won, but they wouldn't listen. Their vision was so narrow, so fixed, that anything outside of it was an aberration, a personal affront. The conversation ended with my father declaring, "Don't bother coming home. We have nothing to say to you until you come to your senses." So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, just weeks from earning a degree I was incredibly proud of, but it was a degree my parents fundamentally rejected. They had cut me off, emotionally and financially. My entire adult life had been a quest for their approval, and now it felt like I had definitively failed. I was torn between the deep-seated desire for parental love and the fierce, newly found independence that came with pursuing my own path. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have tried to reconcile, perhaps gone back to appease them? Or would you have stood your ground, even if it meant losing your family? I decided to stand my ground. It was excruciating, but I couldn't undo 4 years of passionate study, of discovering who I truly was. I couldn't pretend to be someone I wasn't anymore. I sent them a carefully worded email, explaining my choice again, emphasizing that I was still their child, and that my chosen path was valid and fulfilling. I even included links to my published work, hoping they might see a glimmer of my talent. They never responded. Graduation day arrived, a beautiful, sunny day that felt utterly surreal. I had debated whether they would even show up. My sister, Sarah, had called me a few days prior, her voice hesitant. "Mom and Dad are really mad, Alex," she'd said. "But they're coming. They think they can still talk sense into you." That was the first red flag, but I desperately clung to the hope that seeing me in my cap and gown, seeing the culmination of my hard work, might soften their hearts, even just a little. I saw them in the crowd, sitting rigidly in the designated family section, their faces unreadable. My heart pounded with a mixture of hope and dread. When my name was called, I walked across that stage, accepted my diploma, and for a fleeting moment felt pure, unadulterated joy. This was my asterisk achievement. As I walked back down the steps, diploma in hand, my eyes met theirs. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin line. My father's jaw was clenched. And then it happened. As I neared their row, still beaming from the stage, my mother rose, her eyes blazing. Before I could even register what was happening, her hand shot out, striking my face with a sharp, stinging blow. The sound echoed in my ears. Immediately after, my father lunged forward, grabbing my arm, his grip like a vice. "You don't deserve that degree," he roared, his voice cutting through the celebratory chatter. "You're a failure, a disgrace, all our sacrifices, wasted on this asterisk." He gestured wildly at my diploma, as if it were a dirty rag. The crowd around us fell silent, a collective gasp rippling through the air. My cheek burned, not just from the slap, but from the humiliation, the utter public shaming. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the faces of the strangers who now stared at me with pity and shock. Sarah, who had been sitting next to them, looked mortified, her face pale. I pulled my arm free from my father's grasp, my own voice trembling with a mixture of rage and profound heartbreak. "Don't ever touch me again," I whispered, barely audible, but I knew they heard it. I turned, my vision swimming, and stumbled away from them, away from the scene, away from the shattered remnants of my childhood dreams of their approval. I didn't look back. I found a secluded spot behind a large oak tree, the roar of the graduation ceremony now a distant, muffled sound. I sat there, hugging my diploma, sobbing uncontrollably. My friend Maya, who had seen everything, found me a few minutes later. She didn't say anything, just sat next to me, offering a comforting presence. That day marked not just the end of my university chapter, but the definitive end of my relationship with my parents. I walked out of that graduation ceremony and never looked back. I stopped answering their calls, ignored their furious voicemails, and blocked their numbers. Sarah tried to mediate at first, but I explained to her, through tears, that I couldn't continue to be a punching bag for their unfulfilled ambitions. She understood, though I knew it pained her. The first few months were incredibly difficult. The ingrained desire for their approval still clawed at me. The silence felt deafening, but with each passing day, a new, unexpected feeling began to blossom: freedom. I got a job as an editorial assistant at a small publishing house, using my degree and my passion. It wasn't a lucrative job, not a doctor or lawyer salary, but it was fulfilling. I started building a life on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could achieve for them. I made new traditions, created my own support system. I learned to celebrate my successes without their validation and to navigate my failures without their harsh judgment. Years passed. I climbed the ladder in the publishing world, eventually becoming a senior editor. My short stories were published in literary journals, and I even started working on a novel. My life was rich, vibrant, and genuinely happy. I heard snippets about my parents through Sarah. They still talked about me as their lost cause, their disappointment. But their words no longer held the power to wound me. The scars remained, a reminder of the battle I fought and won, but they no longer defined me. Cutting my parents out was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most essential. It was an act of self-preservation, a declaration that my worth was inherent, not contingent on their approval. It allowed me to finally become the person I was always meant to be, free from the suffocating weight of their expectations. My degree wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of my liberation, a testament to the fact that I deserved to choose my own path, and I deserved to celebrate it. Even if they couldn't see that, I did. If you've ever felt trapped by family expectations, know that you're not alone and your happiness matters. Like this video if you were on my side, if you understand the impossible choice I had to make. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories of finding your voice and standing up for yourself. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll be reading every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.